Sixth 2022 meeting of the Ames Planning and Zoning Commission will come to order. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make our recommendations based on city codes, the fact presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item. Please direct your input to the commission. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker information card and present it to the recording secretary, Eileen, right back there. We ask that you come to the microphone and speak so that all comments may be recorded. The order for proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. City staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of city staff, and the applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will then be invited to come forward and offer comments and questions. Once public comment is closed, city staff and the applicant will have an opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission will discuss the application based on all presentations and any comments given and come to a recommendation for the city council. The discussion may include further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. And with that, we'll move on to the first item of the agenda, which is the introduction of commission members. We'll start over here.
Julie Winter.
Mike Sullivan.
Mike Clayton.
John Emery.
Mike LaPetra.
Aspen Flans.
And Jim Blickensdorf.
Okay, we have an agenda here. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And we also have minutes from the May 18th, 2022 meeting in front of us. I assume you all had time to take a look at them. Are there any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion that's seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, item number 5 on the agenda is the public forum. And that is for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that would have any items to speak on that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close the public forum. Item 6 is the public hearing for the major site development plan at 1699 Apple Place.
Good evening, Commission. Sorry, I'll be presenting down here. I had some technical issues getting my laptop connected up there. So start. Tonight we have a major site plan for a small amenity building that's being rebuilt within this mobile home park. It's coming to the commission because of the RLP zoning, which requires any structure to be approved through a major site development plan process. In this case, the pool house in a different format previously existed, and the owner's looking to rebuild it and then have a new overhang extend off the front of the pool structure. So we expect mobile home parks to have an amenity area. This fits in with the intent of that area. It's right in the same location, essentially, of where it was or is today. So this location map is showing you that the amenity area is really far into the site. It's nowhere near a public street. It's been in this location for decades overall. I'm going to come down here. So the site plan shows you the configuration that we're talking about, with the building being this area here for the restrooms, essentially, and then for the new overhang out onto the pool deck area itself. We recommend approval. We find it to be consistent with all the site development plan criteria, and it's also in essence, a necessity of having an amenity as part of the overall mobile home park design. So we're recommending approval this time.
Do any of the commission members have any questions for staff?
There's a building there now, right? Or they tear it down already?
There was, if it's not there now, there was one of that. I don't know if it's been removed already or not, but it's replacing one that was there recently if it's not still there.
Okay, and the proposed building is the same dimensions essentially. The major difference would be the additional roof.
Yeah, the enclosed building component is essentially the same. The overhang is a new projection for that building, but it was already a pervious covered area. It was just an open deck instead of being a covered area.
Okay, is the applicant here tonight?
They are.
Okay. Would you like to speak on the project?
Only if you have questions.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none?
I do, but it's on something else. The question I asked you before, but okay.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. And I guess we're looking for any other discussion amongst ourselves. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved
Move what?
to approve the request.
Alternative one?
Okay, an alternative one is the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends that the city council approve the major site development plan for 1699 Apple Place to reconstruct a new pool house. Is there a second?
Yep.
Okay, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. And the motion is approved. Item 7 on the agenda is zoning text amendment for reduced medical parking rates.
Want me to start?
What's that? Oh. Do we need to take a 5-minute recess? Okay. Okay, the zoning text amendment for reduced medical parking rates.
Good evening. So tonight you have a proposal to change one of our parking rates as it relates to medical office parking. We have 2 different rates that we use across the city, and it's based on whether the building is 50,000 square feet or more in square footage. Alternatively, if you are a smaller building and you have shared parking, meaning you have multiple buildings on a site and you've agreed to a shared parking arrangement, you have a different parking rate as well. So our base parking rate for medical offices, we're going to talk in the number of spaces per 1,000 square feet. It's a little easier to compare what these ratios mean than talking about the amount of square feet per space, in our opinion. So the current rate translates into 7 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of floor area of a building. What's requested is to change the standard to 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. The lower rate that we have right now is 5 spaces per 1,000. And so the request to lower it to 4 is based on a city council discussion of this same request, and city council electing to allow for an application to lower the parking rate for all medical office uses across the city from the 7 or the 5 down to 4 spaces per 1,000. At 4 spaces per 1,000, it would still be a rate that's somewhat higher than our general office rate. It would definitely be on the low end of what you would see for medical parking if you tried to do a comparison to what other recommendations are, other standards. So it really comes down to, in terms of lowering this parking rate and staff size, is what do we think is the context of this use? Is it really a very heavily vehicle-driven use? And then also, is the surroundings likely to be impacted from a lack of abundant parking? I think 7 spaces per 1,000 is very clearly an abundant parking rate. The only things that are higher than that are bars, restaurants, and fast food restaurants that we have in the city code. So it's at the very, very high end of what you would expect. So staff is very confident we don't need a 7 space per 1,000 square foot standard across the city. So we outlined a couple of other options depending on what the priorities or concerns might be for changing the ratio. So the 4 spaces per 1,000 is what's requested by the applicant. The other option that we left on the table was to just make it a uniform 5 spaces per 1,000 across the city. And then we also offered a third option, which tried to think of this a little bit differently about where are our medical office uses. For the most part, our medical office uses are I wouldn't say half of the square footage, but something in that range is in the McFarland and Mary Greeley, main McFarland Clinic area, and Mary Greeley on South Duff and 13th Street. There's some other additional office space surrounding that campus, and that's what we call our hospital medical district. And it then is surrounded by essentially single family homes for the most part. The rest of our medical office uses are pretty much spread out across the city into other commercial districts that are not integrated into neighborhoods for the most part. You have some medical office up north, you have another McFarland clinic out west, to the south in an industrial area, and then various smaller commercial office and medical office users, especially out west on 13th Street, in that Philadelphia, Baltimore Street, the Pizza Ranch office park out there. So for the most part, the other medical office uses are kind of diversified across the city and really not concentrated. So option 3 took a look at that and said, if the hospital medical district, which appears to have mostly been built out at that 5 space per 1,000 rate. So in our older code, that was the standard. That's what is really how that area was built out. It wasn't built at a lower or a higher rate from what we could tell. So if we really wanted to say lower rates might be more appropriate in more spread out areas of the city, but we were concerned about neighborhood impacts for hospital medical, then you would pick option 3, which is lowering the rate for most of the places across the city, but then it's specifying that in some more sensitive areas, which we left as downtown gate. I'll touch on downtown Gateway as well. The hospital medical neighborhood, and then downtown Gateway, we would keep it 5 spaces per 1,000. I did leave out that in downtown Gateway commercial, which is a very small area of the city, but it's on Lincoln Way near Kellogg, Clark Avenue, and South Duff, kind of on both sides of Lincoln Way. When we created that zoning district, we did not want to incent medical office use going to this area with a reduced parking rate. So it had a 6 per 1,000 parking rate with allowances to reduce that further with shared parking. So we intentionally wrote this parking standard to be comparable to regular general office uses and not try to incent that activity going there. It's not that it couldn't, but we didn't want to reduce the parking so much that it became the most attractive place to site medical office uses. So we're suggesting that if we're going to lower the parking rate across the city, but we want to have sensitive areas where we want to look at this a little bit differently, we would include that with hospital medical. So option 3 includes that in the description. Along with all of these three options, we do have a note that we should change or update what is medical office. The way our zoning ordinance is written, the parking code is really straightforward. It just says medical office. When you try to track that back into our use categories and definitions, it's relying on a definition of a clinic to be medical office, which is a little different than probably what most of us think is medical office. So regardless of the options, we want to go in and update the definition of clinic to be more clearly probably how we all understand medical office and how you use it on a regular basis across the city. So staff's recommendation after considering these three options was really to think about alternative 3 as our preferred choice. It addresses the applicant's interests, but it also preserves the historical parking rates for that hospital medical area, which in the past has had neighborhoods that are very sensitive to the intensity of parking, the use of on-street parking and traffic in those areas. So staff is recommending alternative 3.
Can we ask questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for option 3, I think I used to live in that Mary Greeley area, and I would definitely say that respecting at least that 5 parking spaces makes sense. But with the reducing the medical parking to 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, those areas are currently all at 5 spaces for the current code. Is that, so we'd be changing that?
So I can't, we didn't go through and pull every old building. In
Okay.
general, when we tried to look at it and assess it, it looked like in general, it was parked at 5 per 1,000.
Okay.
Mary Greeley itself, the hospital is actually parked at a different rate because a hospital has a different parking
Right.
rate. It's not the same as a clinic or a medical office building. So really you can remove Mary Greeley proper from the discussion of what the parking is there. Just think of the satellite office buildings around there.
Gotcha. Okay.
So right now it's sitting at 7 though.
No, it's sitting around 5.
It says under the options, the applicant is requesting the city approve a text amendment, change the medical office parking for under 50,000 in the current 7 spaces per 1,000.
So the rate is 7 per 1,000. The developed area is 5 per 1,000 in the hospital medical area. Is that?
Okay. So Mary Greeley plus all the other buildings
So you think
on
McFarland
13th
Clinic,
and Duff.
main clinic, and then all the stuff on the east side of Duff, and then a couple of the other Mary Greeley buildings, they're generally parked at that 5 per 1,000 rate.
Okay. So on average across all those.
Right. And some of them aren't medical. Some of them are just office buildings. So there's a little bit, and they have shared parking and they have, remote
Okay.
parking lots. So it's a little hard to say exactly which building is which, but it appeared from our assessment to be about 5 per 1,000.
And no matter which one you want us to go with, you want to update the
The definitions.
definition. So
Yep.
everything should have it. If we decide to go with 2,
Yeah, whichever
we
option.
still need to see of 3.
We think it'd be easier for everybody if we update that definition of a clinic to be more about medical office.
I mean, it sounds like the recommendation is on the right track based on the fact that Urban Land Institute, you found that the parking accommodations right now, if we would change it to the recommendation, that they would be in line with Urban Land Institute. So, I mean,
And so the Urban Land Institute, if you're not from ULI, if you're not familiar with it, it's more of a development advocacy group in terms of thinking of urban development and trying to have right size standards, promote urban patterns of development over maybe rural or suburban patterns of development. That's the background of that group. ITE is the International Traffic Engineers Association. They have more of an approach of surveying what's been built and then making models to see and compare utilization of what's been built. And a lot of people have in the past relied on ITE because they were kind of the first one to wade into traffic studies and parking studies. And then ULI has been around for about 2+ decades and looking at it through a little bit different lens than the traffic engineers look at it. But they both, as you just pointed out, both of them are saying less than 5 has hit. What I think the way that the ITE would look at it and the way most parking studies look at things is you're not parking anything. You're trying not to park anything for peak use. you're at best trying to park for 85th percentile, meaning that 85% of the time you have enough parking to serve those uses. Peak days, you might not. So really looking at that 4 to 4.5 as the ratio, those two organizations are really saying that in essence, 85% of the time you would have enough parking for most uses, most days of the year, most times of the day.
Are there any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to speak? And please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Amber Deerdorf. I'm one of the vice presidents at Mary Greeley Medical Center. Thanks for allowing me to come here to speak with you tonight. I'm really here to answer any questions, but then to reiterate some of the items within our letter. It really is about a planned building. I'm here to represent both Mary Greeley and McFarland Clinic this evening. We are partnering in a potential medical office building here in town. We've done quite a bit of planning already for that building, and through our workflow development, through some of the engineering, we are very confident in the numbers that we provided in that letter on our max capacity day. The maximum number of patients and families that we would serve within that building is no more than 35. And we are limited by the number of patients we can bring in at any given time because of the number of ORs and endoscopy suites that we have. So unless we would expand this building in size, we're at max capacity with those 35 patients. And then if on those max capacity days, we would have at maximum 50 staff in the building at any given time. And so when you look at that, we're thinking 85 spots would be like peak hours, peak time, and the maximum we would expect to see. And the current code has it at 238 stalls required. The second part of that letter was all about the cost burden of those extra spots as well. We started this project and just planning it several years ago, and we thought we budgeted high with our potential cost of this building. As you all know, last 6-12 months, the cost has just skyrocketed once again. And so we currently have a budget of over 40% of what we thought was high to begin with about 2 years ago. So it truly is a cost burden. And we are here just to respectfully ask for the 4 stalls per 1,000 square feet for that medical office space. And I know this discussion is much larger than that one building, and I appreciate the conversation here.
And what's the building? I'm kind of getting lost in all the Mary Greeley Medical Center versus McFarland. Where's the building?
Yeah, it's actually a partnership, and it'll be out in a new development out kind of by the Pizza Ranch across from the USDA, a new development going out there. So it would potentially be in one of those lots.
Do you, if we approved 5 stalls per 1,000, would that still allow your building plans to work? I know you have a cost burden with increased costs.
It would be an extra cost burden, certainly better than the 7. So I'm not going to say no, but 4 would very much meet the needs of that building space. So I would feel better with 4, but 5's great.
Would there be any permanent vehicles at the clinic, whether for the clinic's use, that need to stay there overnight?
Really good question. And so right now we have 4 rooms total that could potentially be used as what we call 23-hour observation rooms. And so if we would choose to do this in this medical office building, there could be up to 4 patients that would spend the night there. And then with that, we would have 2 staff members on site. So there would be 6 potential overnights.
And so Kelly, then if I'm understanding correctly, the nature of this proposed development, we're wrapping into the entire conversation of medical office, and we're trying to keep those regulations consistent across all medical offices.
Correct. So we determined that the use described to us would not qualify as a hospital, or it should be a medical center is what we would call it, which is good for them. So the way they describe that use, we would call it medical office, and it would also fit the definition of a clinic. This one was easy to classify, both in the parking table and in the use table.
Okay, so basically what we choose at this point then would apply to medical office in this case, as well as medical office.
Yeah, so the medical office definition is not because of the proposal by Mary Greeley and McFarland. It's staff suggesting it would be easier to classify other users across the city. It has nothing to do with them and their specific project.
Okay.
Language clarification, in other words.
Yeah, I think it was just a term 20 years ago that maybe was a little more narrow than it would be considered today. And it's just easier to explain when you have the right words for the definition than clinic.
Kelly, am I right in understanding? So this is the minimum parking requirement. If
Yes.
If a facility medical office was going to build and decided they wanted more than the minimum, they could build more, right?
Correct. We do not have maximum parking
Yeah.
rates. We just have minimums.
Okay, I have a couple questions. The first one is on option 3, section B. When you refer to hospital medical in there, you do mean hospital medical special purpose parking zone?
Yeah,
Or is
so
that a
the
separate
special
overlay?
purpose zoning district of hospital medical, that's what we're referring to. Correct.
And the downtown gateway, again, that's Lincoln between
Essentially,
Kellogg and Duff?
essentially Duff to Clark on both sides of Lincoln Way.
Is there any reason why that wouldn't be 4 as well? Just to disincentivize?
Again, I think it's
development?
more to disincent than it is anything else. And the other thing is that downtown Gateway has a more complex parking scheme than anywhere else in the city. It has a lot of built-in reductions. So if you drop the base rate, it makes me question the reduction methodology that we put in there as well, because then it could get to be too low. And then we could very easily have a push of overburden the public parking system then once you factor in all the other reduction options. So downtown Gateway is definitely unique in how it looks at parking across compared to all other zoning districts in the city.
And just a question for the petitioner, I think that if I understand where you want to locate the facility, there's opportunities down the road to enter into shared parking agreements with other landowners
Yep.
in that space.
You could potentially, yep.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Kelly,
Thank you.
oh no, not for Kelly. Have you received any questions about this or comments from any other medical offices or dentist offices about lowering the rate, or
Not
any against
since-
it? I guess.
So in the last year, I think we've had 2 other medical office people we'd have to classify as medical office. They were not very interested in the 7 spaces per 1,000 parking rate. So they have not yet gone forward with their projects. There's one that's been submitted that we did inform them this was underway. So it actually helps them. They were going to build in phases, so then they wouldn't have to build a second phase of parking if this was adopted, because they could drop from the 7 down to the 4 per 1,000, and it would meet their interest. And that's for an optometrist. Again, not a high demand medical office use when you kind of factor in how it really works, but it gets classified as medical office. And so it's usually those. So what we've seen is the dentist, the chiropractor, the optometrist, those kinds of medical office uses that we've seen in the last few years. They're the ones that don't really at all need 7 per 1,000. And I would argue that we haven't really seen that as a need, even in the more in the larger McFarland spaces, because they've all had a way to get down to 5 per 1,000. So the 3 main McFarland establishments, the main clinic, the establishment out west, and the establishment out down to the south, they're all parked at 5 per 1,000 because they have shared parking.
That south one is 5 per 1,000?
Yep. With
That's a lot
the
of parking.
with the shared parking with the preschool, and then there's an on-street parking allowance in the loop also. So it's been really no large building has been built with the 7 per 1,000 standard. So that's what gives us a fair amount of comfort that dropping it really is not a significant risk to compatibility or integration with the areas, because most of these buildings are being built at 5 per 1,000.
Are we allowed to talk amongst ourselves? No.
When the hearings close, then there can be commission discussion.
Just one more clarifying question. So option 3, am I right in understanding? So that would allow the 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet for this new building, but not in that special zoning area by Mary Greeley?
Correct.
Okay.
So across everywhere except for where it's concentrated,
Right.
it would drop.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak or ask questions? Seeing none, I'll close the comment period. Is there any other questions for staff? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I've
We have one down
I've
here.
got one for you.
okay.
Just because I can't find it quickly in the document. What's the square footage of the proposed facility?
Of what?
Of the facility? 34?
How does that compare with like the ones down south? The McFarland Clinic one?
Those are less than 50,000 as well. I just
Yeah.
don't know how close they are to the 34,000.
Okay.
Hold on.
So adjusted, I asked him to look up some other comparables. So 3500 University Boulevard, which is McFarland South, has 23,600 square feet.
Okay.
McFarland West, which is out by West Hy-Vee, that's a total of over 43,800 square feet. And then if you think about McFarland North, which is just past Fairway, that's a 15,600 square foot building, including the basement. So those are the three McFarland establishments. And they were all parked at 5 per thousand because of the shared parking arrangement option. They're not parked at 7 per thousand.
Okay.
I just have a comment. I think that 7 per thousand is too much. I agree there, but dropping down to 4, it might end up with an impact in some neighborhoods. Not necessarily the new one proposed, but in other neighborhoods. That's, I know it's been a problem, as you stated, up in around the clinic and McFarland Clinic now.
I feel like it's mostly, I guess where I was thinking was making sure we didn't drop that hospital amount down to 4, because that's, and especially with the, I mean, I'm not a healthcare expert, but with the projected growth of that hospital serving other surrounding communities, I'm pleased to see that would stay at 5 if we would choose.
And what I'm trying to say too is that to make it 5 across the board would simplify everything. So instead of piecemeal here and there, I realize we're talking about
It just
the
seems like
downtown gateway area, and it could end up applying to other places.
It just seems like a lot of parking. I mean, if I think of that south facility, that is a huge parking lot that every time I've been there, it's at 50% capacity maybe. I mean, going at a
Right.
normal 9 to 5 hour.
Room to expand, plenty of room to expand down there
Yeah.
is what, and I'm sure that's why you guys built down there, was because there's room to expand. And I understand the C of option 3 too, the clarification.
Well, also the potential spill of parking into neighborhoods, though. I mean, clinics are open during working hours. It's not necessarily overnight. So I also don't see why, if we drop it to 4 and then occasionally there is spillover into neighborhoods, why that would be such a bad thing. We can park on streets.
Because mainly the clinics they're talking about, that's like on Duff Ave, right? On the east side. Is that
West side. The-
west
It's
west of
more
Duff?
impacted
But then
than
there's
any
like
place.
some admin offices on the east side. Like all that's probably zoned as.
So I can put up the zoning map here for you, so if you want to understand. So the purple area is what's hospital medical. So you have 13th Street right through here, and then Duff is running right through the middle here. So again, leave Mary Greeley proper out of here. That's not part of the same calculation of requirements. It's the smaller lots that are all around the periphery of this area.
So what that's showing is those clinics and those buildings on the east side of Duff are part of that hospital medical special purpose zoning
Yeah.
district. Yeah.
And perhaps some of the smaller parcels on the south side, maybe. I don't know if those would be connected or not. But you said on average across all those parcels right now, they're at, you thought potentially
typic-
5 per.
Yeah, so a lot of them predated the 2000. So before 2000, the standard was 5 per thousand. So any building that was built before 2000 was definitely under or 5 or at 5 probably. And then some of those are also administrative office buildings, and they are not all medical square footage, so they're parked a little bit differently as well.
Before moving to Ames, I was involved in parking commission, my last city I lived in. And I love that stuff. I will always support lower parking minimums or even parking maximums. I think parking is the lowest, the least valuable use of land. And for a 34,000 square foot facility to have 170 spaces is, I think it's unnecessary. And I know that, prior to COVID, surface parking spots could cost somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 per space. I could see you guys easily spending $3.5 million before it's adjusted for the inflation that we've seen from COVID in just the parking lot. I just think there's a better use for limited funds that you guys have to serve the community rather than spaces that will likely never be used, particularly in this case, because they're surrounded by uses that are mostly 8 to 5. If you're a 23-hour facility or a 24-hour facility, there's opportunities to park share.
And also we do have transit and shared use paths in these areas as well. Not everybody drives to appointments.
It's a good point that there's transit connections to that area.
In Ames, everybody drives, almost. Ames is a car city. Has always been a car city. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Then I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to choose option 2, reduce the rate for all medical office buildings uses to 5 per thousand square feet for all buildings, update and modify medical office use and clinic definition to clarify applicability to physical therapy, chiropractors, and other commonly used associated with medical care.
Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails. Is there another motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move for option 3. Or I guess,
You have to read all that.
number 3, recommend that the city council reduce medical parking to 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet for areas outside of the hospital medical area and establish a parking rate of 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet for the hospital medical area and update definitions.
I'd say to include the downtown gateway at the 5 per thousand, making me question if I got continuity in the
What's that?
report there.
Oh, sorry, I was just. Yes, and apply a 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet standard to the hospital, medical, and downtown gateway commercial zoning districts.
I'd second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is number 8, bylaws update.
So if you recall, back in May, I believe we took a look at the bylaws, and the direction was to update them just to reflect that the land use policy plan no longer is in effect and that we have a comprehensive plan. So the only section that is being altered is what we put in the memo. Easy strike through underlined version, and a majority vote of the commission would change the bylaws to reflect this change.
Okay, do we need to take any action on it, or?
You do. You have to have a
We do have
majority
to
vote
take action on
to
it.
approve the language.
Okay, and for those of you that are new, we did discuss this at the last meeting back in May. Basically, it's just a correction of the name of the plan. With the land use policy plan no longer exists the way it used to, and it's now the city's comprehensive plan. Is there any other discussion or questions? With that, I would entertain a motion.
So moved to be approved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And motion passes. Commission comments. Welcome aboard to the two new people.
Welcome.
Your name is Aspen?
Aspen. Yeah.
It's okay. And Jim, I can see Jim's, but yours was kind of at an angle. Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Staff comments.
I don't really have any. You have a tentative agenda for the next meeting right now. We don't have any items. I'm not canceling yet. So if you haven't, for those of you who are new, we don't cancel until about a week before the meeting, just to make sure we have time if something does come up and get complete enough to make the board. We make that decision about a week in advance, not 2 weeks in advance. But right now, it's unlikely you'll have a meeting.
I'm glad to see that we had a full boat, that we got refilled.
Oh yeah, full 7. I'm more than excited to have 7 of
I was
you.
going to say, this is the first time we've had a full load since I started 2.5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Well, I think we had 7 for about a month
Yes.
this year. Then when Kayana said that she was leaving,
oh, that's right.
then-
Yeah, we did.
Oh,
Yeah,
when,
for about a month.
Well, you had Ruth. We had 7 for like
Ruth
one.
first and then Keona, yeah.
Ruth, then yeah. So it was short lived.
yeah.
So you're all stuck now for a couple of years.
And,
Nobody can.
and if we don't have a full boat, sometimes it becomes
We have to.
long.
We have to have, yeah. Okay, any other questions or discussion?
I guess I'll just one other staff comment. We gave you a short presentation, I think, about the fringe plan earlier this spring. The public comment period, we ran that in cooperation with Story County from May to the middle of June. So we've collected comment on that, and we'll be moving into the next phase to review comment and get direction from council how to proceed. Council voted last week to extend the current plan status quo until November 8th. We had hoped to be able to get done with the plan this summer. That's not going to happen, to get through a review cycle, an updated plan, and then get back to do the amendment procedures through the planning commissions and through the boards. So it'll still be coming this fall. We'll do an update with council sometime this summer still, and then we'll come back into public hearings and come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation, because we're treating it as an amendment to the comp plan to adopt a new fringe plan. So if you've been watching out for that issue, that's where it stands. A lot of comment, obviously, almost all of it's from the county folks that are affected by the land use scheme that's described in that update. So.
It seems to be an issue, I'd say on Dakota, 2 miles south of US 30. I've seen a lot of yard signs.
Yes.
Yes. And on state. I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Did the county ever decide what was happening with this Pioneer Cemetery? Or has there been a decision on that?
You're talking about on Dayton?
Yeah.
I don't think the county was ever involved in that.
It was a township, just a township, wasn't it?
I think we decided on
Yeah.
that.
So what happened was, with the annexation, we did a pre-annexation agreement with the property owner. And under state law, they could accept responsibility for the cemetery. So the property owner accepted that responsibility.
Yeah.
So now it has a place, and it's assigned who is responsible for it.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.